When Madison first laid her eyes on James Parker back in college, she thought she had found the man of her dreams. James was quiet, intelligent, and carried himself with a confidence that drew people in without him ever needing to say much. He wasn't the loudest in the room, but he was always the one people listened to. Madison, with her bright laugh and magnetic charm, was the complete opposite. Together, they balanced each other out, or so it seemed to everyone watching from the outside. They married young, full of ambition, and the belief that their love could weather anything. For years, James worked tirelessly, building his career in finance while Madison stayed home, raising their 2 children and enjoying the comfort his steady income provided. They lived in a suburban neighborhood in Chicago, the kind where kids rode bikes down wide streets and neighbors hosted block parties in the summer. To everyone else, they were the perfect couple, stable, successful, and content. But behind closed doors, cracks had started to show. Madison grew restless. While James spent late nights at the office or on business trips, she felt increasingly lonely. She missed the attention he used to shower her with when they were younger. She convinced herself that he cared more about his work than her, even though his work was for the sake of their family. When Madison met Ryan, a younger man at her gym who was full of charm and constantly complimented her, she felt alive again. Their flirtation escalated quickly into a full-blown affair. Ryan wasn't stable, wasn't successful, and wasn't reliable, but he was exciting, and Madison craved excitement. She didn't think much about the consequences. She told herself James would never find out. But James did. One evening, after months of suspicion, James returned early from a trip and found Madison in their home with Ryan. The betrayal was a dagger straight to his heart. He didn't scream, didn't throw things, didn't rage like Madison had feared he might. Instead, he stood silently in the doorway, his face expressionless. That silence scared her more than any anger ever could. A week later, divorce papers were served. Madison tried to act indifferent, but deep down she panicked. Her friends reassured her she would be fine. After all, James was wealthy now. He had been working for years, climbing the corporate ladder, making investments, and even starting a private firm. She had no idea just how successful he had become, but she assumed she would walk away with plenty. She even laughed with her friends about it, telling them, "At least I'll get half." On the day of the divorce hearing, Madison strutted into the courtroom in a designer dress she had bought with James's money. She wore a smile, her laughter bubbling out when the judge asked if she was ready to proceed with signing the papers. To her, this was just a formality. She'd sign, she'd cry a little for appearances, and then she'd leave with the security of knowing James's hard-earned fortune would cushion her mistakes. James, on the other hand, walked in quietly, dressed in a plain gray suit, his hair combed neatly, his face calm. His attorney greeted him with a respectful nod, while Madison barely glanced his way. She didn't see the man she had fallen in love with years ago. She saw the man who worked too much, who stopped paying attention, the man she thought she had outgrown. The proceedings began smoothly. The lawyers exchanged pleasantries, and the judge flipped through the documents with a bored expression. Madison leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs confidently. She thought she was winning. But then the judge paused. He cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, and looked directly at Madison. "Mrs. Parker, before we finalize the divorce decree, I need to make sure you understand the financial disclosures your husband has provided." Madison waved a dismissive hand. Yes, I'm aware. We'll split everything." The judge's eyebrow arched slightly. "Everything as in his net worth?" "Yes," she said smugly, her voice dripping with arrogance. "Half of whatever he has." The judge nodded slowly, then began to read aloud. "According to the financial disclosures, Mr. Parker's net worth, including his private equity holdings, investment portfolios, real estate assets, and corporate shares, currently stands at approximately $425 million. The courtroom went silent. Madison's smile froze on her face, her laughter dying in her throat. She blinked rapidly, convinced she had misheard. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "Did you say millions?" The judge's tone remained steady. $425 million. "Yes, Mrs. Parker. That is correct." Gasps rippled through the small courtroom, even from the attorneys. Madison's hands trembled. She had lived in comfort with James, but he had never flaunted his wealth. She had assumed he was doing well, maybe even very well, but never in her wildest imagination did she think he was a multimillionaire. Suddenly, the weight of her choices crashed down on her. She had laughed signing the divorce papers, thinking she was clever, thinking she was walking away into a new, exciting life with Ryan. But now, she realized she had been blind. The man she betrayed wasn't just her husband. He was one of the wealthiest men in the city. And now, she was about to lose him, and everything that came with him. The judge continued. Given the prenuptial agreement signed before your marriage, Mrs. Parker, you are entitled to a fair settlement, but not half. The prenup clearly stipulates specific terms. Madison's jaw dropped. She remembered signing the prenup back in their early 20s. She hadn't cared then. She was in love, and James's modest savings didn't seem worth fighting over. She had forgotten all about it. James's lawyer handed over the document, pointing out the clauses. Madison's attorney tried to object, tried to argue for more, but the judge was firm. The agreement is binding, Mrs. Parker. You will receive the specified settlement of $200,000, along with temporary spousal support for 1 year, after which all obligations will cease. $200,000. To Madison, who had just learned James was worth hundreds of millions, the figure felt insulting. She stared at James, her eyes wide, her voice shrill. You're just going to throw away our marriage like this? After everything we had? James finally spoke, his voice low but steady. You threw it away the moment you chose someone else over us. I gave you everything I could, my time, my effort, my loyalty. But you wanted more excitement. I hope you find it, Madison. His calmness infuriated her even more. She wanted him to beg, to cry, to regret letting her go. But he didn't. He simply looked at her with a quiet sadness, then turned his gaze back to the judge. Ryan, who had been sitting in the back of the courtroom for support, suddenly shifted uncomfortably. The reality of Madison's choices hit him too. He wasn't a wealthy man. He wasn't dependable. And he certainly wasn't going to be able to give her the lifestyle she had grown accustomed to. He slipped out quietly, leaving Madison alone in her humiliation. The divorce was finalized that day. James walked out with his dignity intact, his fortune secure, and his future ahead of him. Madison walked out in shock, the laughter she had so confidently flaunted now a bitter memory.